Welcome to F-Bomb Friday. I'm your host, Tracy Preston, along with my husband, Todd. Hey, hon.
Hey, baby.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's hit it. There are places in Michigan where the darkness feels a little different. Places where the trees seem too quiet. Places where the water looks deeper than it should. Places where an abandoned building sits empty for so long that you start to wonder what might still be waiting inside. And then there are places that shouldn't exist at all. Today, we are going somewhere like that. Somewhere that may not have an address. Somewhere that may not appear on a map. Somewhere that, according to one bizarre Michigan legend, isn't actually in our world. It's underneath it, or beside it, or maybe outside of it. On today's episode of F-Bomb Friday, we are talking about Michigan Blue Hell. So, what the hell is Blue Hell? If you've ever played a video game and accidentally fallen through the floor, you already understand the basic idea. Except in this story, there's no respawn button. If you've spent any time playing three-dimensional video games, you may have experienced something called Blue Hell. It happens when a game glitches. Your character is supposed to stay inside the boundaries of the world the developers created. But sometimes, something goes wrong. You walk through a wall. You fall through the floor. You somehow get outside the map. And suddenly, you're no longer standing inside the game world. You're underneath it. Around you might be the backs of buildings, pieces of terrain, floating structures, or an enormous empty void. The world is still there, but you're not supposed to be able to see it from where you are. You're somewhere the developers never intended you to go. Players begin referring to these strange out-of-bounds areas as Blue Hell. And that's where the Michigan legend really gets weird. Because if a video game can have boundaries, what if the real world has boundaries too? And what if, somewhere in Michigan, there's a glitch? A place where reality doesn't quite fit together properly. A place where someone could somehow step outside the boundaries of existence itself. Not into another country, not even into another dimension in the traditional science fiction sense, but somewhere underneath reality. The earliest solid source I've been able to find for the modern Michigan Blue Hell legend is a January 2018 post from a site called Dubious Panda. And right away, the story gets strange. The writer describes Michigan Blue Hell as a rumor about a real-life reality glitch. Somewhere in Michigan, a place a person might somehow access, even though it was never meant to be accessible. A place outside of normal space and time, outside the universe as we understand it. And then comes the part that gives the legend its teeth. According to the story, the rumors began with someone who went looking for Blue Hell and disappeared. They supposedly never came back. No explanation, no return. Just gone. And because they were allegedly searching for blue hell when they disappeared, people were left with one particularly unsettling possibility. Maybe they found it. The writer also compares the phenomena to the elevator game. Another internet-born paranormal ritual said to involve a specific sequence of elevator rides that can supposedly transport someone somewhere they shouldn't be. And that creates an even more disturbing possibility. Maybe blue hell isn't simply a location. Maybe there are ways of accidentally or intentionally crossing the boundary and disappeared. Maybe they found it. But where is it? Well, that's where things get complicated, because there doesn't seem to be one agreed upon location. Some versions place blue hell beneath Michigan's underground tunnels. Others put it beneath the Great Lakes. Some claim it's inside an abandoned building, and one later version placed it somewhere on a military installation in Michigan. Now, that claim comes from a March 2018 follow-up post by the same dubious panda writer. According to that post, further research has supposedly convinced the author that blue hell was located on a military base. And the reasoning is almost perfect for an urban legend. If there really were a place where people could disappear from reality, wouldn't the government want to keep people away from it? And if it happened to be inside a military installation, well, good luck finding it. The story claimed there was no way to access blue hell from outside the military compound, which naturally raises an even bigger question. How the hell would anybody know where it was? Michigan is a particularly good setting for a story like this. We're surrounded by water. We've got abandoned mines, old industrial buildings, sewer systems, utility tunnels, historic tunnels, quarries, underground infrastructure, and an absolutely enormous amount of wilderness. There are plenty of places where you can walk into Michigan and lose sight of civilization pretty damn quickly. So it's easy to imagine how a legend about an underground passage to somewhere impossible could take root. Some versions claim blue hell can be reached through tunnels. You go deep enough, far enough, until something changes. Maybe the tunnel doesn't end where it should. Maybe you find a door. Maybe there's a wall that doesn't quite look right. Maybe there's a hole. And maybe if you are foolish enough or curious enough to climb through it, you don't come out the other side. Because there may not be another side. Another version puts blue hell underwater. And if you've ever spent time around the Great Lakes, you already know why that idea works so well. They're enormous. They're dark. They're cold. And they can turn deadly with astonishing speed. There's something psychologically different about looking across a lake when you can't see the opposite shore. You know there's something beneath you. You just can't see it. Now imagine that somewhere beneath that water, there's a hole. Not a cave, not a wreck, not an underwater tunnel, a hole in reality. And instead of falling downward, you fall outward, out of the world. Some versions of Michigan Blue Hell claim an entrance could exist beneath Lake Erie. Others expand the idea into stories about tunnels beneath the Great Lakes and passages connecting different bodies of water. But this is where we need to pump the brakes, because some modern retellings claim these ideas come from ancient Native American traditions. And this is where the legend gets messy. You'll find versions of the Blue Hell story online that connect it to Nanabozo, the well-known cultural hero and trickster figure found in the Anishinaabe traditions. In some of those modern versions, Nanabozo is described as pursuing or defeating a great serpent and trapping it beneath the earth or beneath one of the Great Lakes. That story is then used to explain Blue Hell as some kind of distortion in reality created by or connected to the imprisoned creature. It makes for a fantastic horror story. But there's a problem. I could not find credible historical evidence establishing Michigan Blue Hell as an ancient Anishinaabe legend. And I could not find reliable documentation showing that traditional Nanabozo stories describe anything called Blue Hell, or anything resembling a modern glitch in reality. The Nanabozo traditions themselves are real, culturally significant, and far older than this internet legend. The Blue Hell interpretation appears to be something else, something newer, something layered onto existing mythology. And that distinction matters, because folklore has always evolved. People take old stories and add new fears. They combine legends. They reinterpret monsters. They attach contemporary ideas to ancient places. And in the internet age, that process happens at warp speed. Another branch of the legend places Blue Hell inside an abandoned building somewhere around Detroit. According to this version, the building is supposedly connected to an old story about a creature or great serpent imprisoned beneath the earth. The lowest levels of the building become the supposed gateway, and in one version, the entrance is tied to the elevator game. You descend, you follow the ritual, you keep going down. And somewhere along the way, you stop being where you started. The idea echoes the video game version of Blue Hell. You're moving through a familiar environment, floor by floor, level by level. Everything looks normal until suddenly it isn't. And that's the thing about Blue Hell. It doesn't necessarily require a giant glowing portal. It doesn't need lighting. It doesn't need demons crawling out of a hole. The horror is much simpler. You could be walking through an ordinary building and suddenly realize that the rules have changed. So what would Blue Hell actually look like? That may be the most fascinating question of all, because there isn't one consistent answer. Some versions describe an endless blue void. Others describe a distorted version of our own world. Imagine standing beneath a city. You can see buildings above you, but they're floating. The streets are there, but you can't reach them. You can see people walking around, but they can't see you. Cars move through intersections, lights turn on, people go about their lives, and you're standing somewhere underneath all of it, close enough to watch, too far away to touch, like you've somehow fallen behind the scenery. One modern description compares it to being trapped behind a one-way mirror. You can observe the world, but the world cannot observe you. And maybe that's what makes the concept so disturbing, because death would almost be easier. At least death has an ending. Blue hell could mean being trapped forever. Watching everyone you know continue living their lives without ever knowing you're still there. And then we come back to the oldest part of the modern legend, the person who supposedly went looking for blue hell and disappeared. Here's the problem. I could not find a verified missing person case connected to the origin of the legend. No confirmed identity, no police report, no documented search, no recovered belongings, no family publicly identifying a loved one as the person behind the story. Nothing that establishes the disappearance as a documented event. As far as we can tell, it is simply a part of the legend, because there's a huge difference between a Michigan resident disappeared while searching for blue hell and the legend says someone disappeared while searching for blue hell. The first claim is a factual claim. The second is folklore. And F-Bomb Friday has never needed to turn folklore into fact to make it creepy. Sometimes the truth is actually stranger. This is where Michigan blue hell gets especially interesting. The modern legend appears to have circulated through internet communities before spreading into paranormal websites, social media, podcasts, videos, music, Reddit discussions, and modern folklore databases. By June 2018, a paranormal podcaster, Jason Carpenter of Dead Rabbit Radio, was discussing Michigan blue hell. His description was simple and terrifying. A tear in the fabric of space-time, allowing someone to fall out of our reality and into something else entirely. That episode helped put the legend in front of a larger audience. And from there, the story kept changing. Someone added tunnels. Someone added the military. Another added Detroit. Then Lake Erie. Then a connection to Native American mythology. Someone tied it to the elevator game, and another connected it to disappearances. And eventually, people began treating all of those versions as if they were pieces of one ancient mystery. But that's not necessarily how folklore works. Sometimes, the legend is born right in front of us. And then there's hell. Of course, there is one Michigan town that practically begs to be involved. Hell, Michigan. Because if you're looking for Michigan blue hell, why wouldn't you start in hell? Except there's apparently no historical tradition connecting the town of Hell to blue hell. The connection seems to be little more than an irresistible joke. But Even that tells us something important about how legends grow. A name can become part of a story simply because it fits. Someone says, "Maybe it's in Hell, Michigan." Someone else repeats it. Then somebody posts it online. Another person sees it and assumes it must have come from somewhere. And eventually, the joke becomes part of the lore. That's how folklore grows. So, is Michigan Blue Hell real? Well, there's no evidence demonstrating that it actually exists. No confirmed portal, no documented reality glitch, no verified location, no scientific evidence of a tear in space-time beneath Michigan, and no credible evidence that Blue Hell originated as an ancient Anishinaabe tradition. But that doesn't mean the story isn't worth telling, because something fascinating is happening here. We are watching a legend being created. Not hundreds of years ago, not around a campfire, not in some forgotten Michigan settlement. We're watching it happen online, piece by piece, post by post, retelling by retelling. And every time someone tells the story, something changes. Maybe that's the real Blue Hell. Think about what it represents. A video game world is constructed by people. Developers create the landscape. They establish the boundaries. They decide where the player can go. And then, sometimes, the player finds a way outside. They discover a place the creators never intended them to see. Now, replace the game with reality. We assume our world has boundaries. We assume space behaves a certain way. We assume time moves forward. We assume a wall is solid. We assume there's a floor beneath our feet, and that when we walk through a door, there will be something on the other side. We also think the rules don't change, but what if they could? What if reality itself had seams? What if there were places where those seams didn't quite meet? And what if somewhere in Michigan there were a crack just wide enough for someone to slip through? Maybe you wouldn't see a glowing portal. Maybe you wouldn't hear anything. Maybe there wouldn't be any warning at all. You'd simply take one step, and suddenly, the ground isn't beneath you anymore. You fall. But you don't fall toward the center of the earth. You don't fall through a tunnel. You don't fall into water. You fall out. And when you look back, Michigan is still there. The roads, the houses, the trees, the people, everything exactly where it should be, except you. And there is no way back. Now, there is one final thing about Michigan Blue Hell that I find more disturbing than the portal itself. You see, the story doesn't really have an ending. There's no explorer who went inside and came back with photographs. No survivor who crawled back out and told us what they saw. No scientist who opened a door and said, "Yep, that's a hole in reality." Instead, we have rumors, contradictions, anonymous claims, internet posts, retellings, and one idea that keeps circling back. Someone went looking for Blue Hell and never came back. Maybe that's bullshit. Maybe that person never existed. Maybe the whole thing was invented by someone sitting at a computer in 2018 who wanted to create a creepy story. And that may be the most reasonable explanation. But here's the fun part. If someone wanted to invent a legend that was almost impossible to disprove, what better story could they create? A place nobody can find? A place nobody can return from? A place that supposedly exists outside reality? And a person who disappeared while searching for it? Because if blue hell doesn't exist, there's nothing to prove. And if it does, the person who found it isn't around to tell us. So maybe the story is exactly what it appears to be. An internet urban legend. A modern piece of folklore. A horror story built from video game glitches. Michigan's underground mysteries. Abandoned places. The Great Lakes. Old mythology. And our very human fear of falling somewhere we're not supposed to be. And remember, if you ever find yourself walking through Michigan and suddenly the ground disappears beneath your feet, don't panic. Just hope there's a respawn point, because if there isn't, you may have just fallen through the map. But maybe, just maybe, there's another possibility. Maybe somewhere beneath Michigan there's a place where the rules stop working. Maybe there is a hole in the map. Maybe there's a place underneath our world where the sky is blue, but there is no sun. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, someone is still falling. Well, guess what?
What?
I have also been in blue hell.
You have?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
You know, my friend Peppa,
Yeah.
he and I like to play games on the Oculus. We play the shoot 'em up games.
Yeah.
And he says to me one day, he's like, Trace, come here. Walk through this wall. I'm like, what? He's like, come on. So he's taken me into a couple of blue hells. So as I was reading the story, I'm like, I know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yep. And I'm not huge into video games, but I've played a few, and this has happened to me before too. And I don't know about respawning or anything like that. I think I just reset the whole system. In this case, you know, if this were to happen in reality, or rather on the side of reality, there is no respawn. There's no reset.
Yeah, in real life, that's frightening.
Yeah, this whole urban legend really has like a Matrix or a Stranger Things type of vibe to it, because it's plausible. It's kind of eerie because you can think about a plane of existence that runs alongside of ours. Now, that is a perfect example of hell, of being on the outside of reality, being able to witness things and not being able to be seen, and to essentially be trapped forever.
Well, initially it's fun because
Yeah.
you're playing, it's like hide and seek, like, ooh, they can't see me. But if you're truly stuck there, that's not a good feeling.
The whole premise of this urban legend, though, it really is, it's perfect. It's perfectly crafted, because what better legend to have than one that you can't prove? There's no place verified for it. Nobody's ever gone looking for it and come back to tell about it. You can't prove that it's real, but you can't prove that it's not real.
Yeah, because they're not coming back.
They're not coming back.
They got no stories.
Right.
It's kind of like Tron.
It is. It's very much like Tron. Yeah.
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 Well, the possibilities are interesting.
Right.
I hope I never fall into blue hell in reality.
That's me either. Me either.
Only virtual reality, thank you.
Yeah.
Where I can respond. Well, great story, hon.
Thanks, baby.
You want to sign us out?
I sure do. You better lock your doors. You better lock your windows. And you might just want to check under your bed.
So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. And we will see you again on Malice Monday.
We will see you all on Monday.